So let me give you what I consider to be an overall picture of what a well-run flipped classroom would look like. Probably at a minimum here, even though it may not sound like it. So obviously we're going to start out with some good engaging videos that draw students in for some other form of preparatory work on their part to get ready for whatever's happening in class the next day. Again, it does not have to be videos. Of course, you can create your own videos. We've talked about this for this purpose, or find content on specific websites or within other streaming services or whatever that's a good fit for the topic you're covering in your course. Or a mix of self-produced videos and existing web content out there. Again, you find what serves your purpose as well. And it would be best if those videos were interactive with built-in formative assessments to, one, check that they are watching, your students are watching the videos, and two, to determine if they're actually taking in the material within the video content and hopefully getting those quiz questions correct. Remember, this can be done with Screencastify or Edpuzzle, as well as lots of other tools, maybe within your LMS. Once students arrive in class, then the next day, you could add one or two more quiz type questions or some other form of warm-up activity that they could only know or do based on watching the video prior to attending class. But then you've created a very interactive, engaging, hands-on, motivating activity for students to participate in either individually or in small groups to truly be active in their learning of the concept being covered in this particular piece of your subject area's curriculum. Again, this is where you get to be creative. This is where you get to have fun in coming up with these types of lesson activities and so on for your students. And in a perfect world, you might even have multiple stations of these types of activities in order to incorporate more of a mastery flipped model that allows for your students to learn more at their own pace. Again, that's kind of another level of the flipped classroom. Next, these activities include heavy doses of formative ways for students to self-determine whether or not they are understanding the content, objectives, and lesson goals, and they are scaffolded in that content to where they build in the overall unit or chapter goals and learning objectives. And rubrics can play a huge role in allowing for students to be more aware of what you expect in an excellent product as your assessments that demonstrates their learning for submissions to these different assignments that go along with their learning path here. At the end of the unit, then, the students are provided with a summative assessment that allows them options for the way that they demonstrate their learning. This is a touchy subject for a lot of teachers because it may be way easier for you to just have a stack of tests or papers that you can sit down and grade in one sitting and be done with. But hear me out on this one. What if you created assessments, and this depends heavily on your subject area, I understand that, to where students could use their strength areas to demonstrate that they have actually learned the material in your class. And maybe they would show you that they have learned it to a much deeper level than a multiple choice exam could ever reveal. So what I mean by this is, what if you created a culminating assignment, summative assignment, that allowed for students to write a paper or create a presentation or produce a video, or maybe they made an interactive web-based poster or infographic or graphic organizer or a physical 3D model, or built a website, or filmed themselves doing an oral presentation, or some other form of demonstrating their knowledge. You can get creative here too on the particular topic or topics covered in this particular unit of study that you're doing in your class right now. Part of the goal here is that not every student is good at written tests or essays or presentations or whatever, and this allows them to perhaps do something that they feel good, that they're good at, creative with, in order to highlight and accentuate what they did learn from you within this topic of study. And along with this choice for your students, you have provided them with a rubric that truly measures what the expectations are for their learning of this topic, so that how they choose to demonstrate their learning doesn't really matter, and certainly doesn't affect their grade. Just the method that they use does not affect their grade for this opportunity to show what they have learned. They have some options to demonstrate their learning to you. And then, depending again on your subject area and whether or not it builds progressively in its own content, this topic is then included, that you've just assessed, this topic is then included in future assessments of their overall learning within your curriculum and objectives, so that your assessments build on somewhat. As your topics build, so do your assessments. But this is also where differentiated learning comes in, where it comes into play with the flipped model, and offers a way for you to kind of personalize your instruction and assessment methods for each of your students. If you can kind of get your mind wrapped around what I was talking about there, to give your students options for demonstrating their learning. Now, does this form of instruction and assessment take a lot of work? Absolutely, it does. However, it's also one of those growth areas for you as a teacher. That's the way I feel about it. Once you get into this groove of teaching and assessing and so on, things get easier with time and experience. Once you get a pattern going, it's just like any other pattern that you have going. It gets easier with time and experience. It does. Hopefully you'll might be teaching the same subject for a number of years, and you can build a library of videos, formative assessments, projects, and rubrics that measure learning really well. Then this process gets to be pretty exciting and fun, because it frees you up. Once you have those things established, then it frees you up to where this process really gets exciting and fun and adds so much dimension to your teaching. Again, it allows for some real creativity within your teaching day. Now, I know, we still have to live in reality of our day-to-day responsibilities and time limitations of what we can do as teachers, but I do believe that you can develop this scenario in your classroom, kind of one unit, chapter, topic, however you break up your courses, at a time, and see how it goes. And if you can get this type of scenario working within a system of students being able to work at their own pace within your curriculum, then the concept of a flipped for mastery course or methodology has the potential to work for your students as well. Not that model I described here is required for that mastery flipped model, but it certainly helps within that process. Pieces of it certainly would. But one way or the other, whatever you have chosen to use in terms of assessing your students' learning, it would be very helpful if there was a way that we could measure whether or not using the flipped model of instruction is helping our students learn, and learn more in depth even. And this is a bit of a difficult thing to measure, or at least in any short-term way. If you've taught that particular class that you want to flip for a while now and have some history of some data and so on of student scores from assessments and so on, and then you could flip that same class for a year or semester or even two with some type of similar assessment tools, and could do a straight across comparison of scores, then we could certainly have a fairly decent measure of success or failure here. But that's a pretty long-term measuring device, a little bit difficult to do because there's so many other factors involved there. But that's our goal with this last piece of the course. And I know I said in the last video that your lessons plans were your final assignment for the course, but I was meaning that they're kind of a final in terms of a cumulative type of assignment for the course. But this is a fairly easy assignment, last assignment here, for the final topic in the course on attempting to make some kind of measurement with how the flipped model is working for you and your students and within your class content. And yes, I'll admit that some of the pieces that I'm advocating here are covered much more in depth than some of my other courses here at Fresno Pacific. But that's really how I got the idea to write those courses, for all of those pieces to come together. Creating a classroom website, I have a course on that. Using cloud-based tools, that's another course. gathering resources and lesson activities by using Twitter as a professional development tool. It's absolutely amazing what teachers share on Twitter. And I believe what is a critical tool, absolutely critical tool in the process, is using rubrics within all your assessments in your classroom. Rubrics are a huge tool. Once you've got them made and refined just a little bit, they are such a huge time-saving device in grading and in getting your students to be able to see what you expect from the very beginning of putting an assignment out there. They just all go together. And so if you haven't had a chance to check out some of my other courses, do that. But again, this is a relatively somewhat easy assignment compared to some of the other ones, I guess. But we're looking for a way to measure, is the flipped classroom working for you or not? And so check out a couple of links. There's not many, a couple topics in the page right after this video. And then your last assignment for the course.